Hello and welcome to Cut and Paste YouTube video for our kid-friendly Gnome canvas. If you're looking for the larger canvas with more detailed branches, things like that, that's our adult YouTube class. You're going to want to look for that one. And this one, if you'd like to join along with us sometime, you can order this canvas pre-traced from cutandpastecraftstudio.com, and we'll pack up the paints and the brushes and you can then paint along with us. If you've already done that and you're joining us, make sure that you have obviously the canvas, which is pre-traced for you, and the set of paints that are labeled. We've got the numbers on your paint sets. You need a bowl of water, and you need the brushes that came in your kit, or if you've done one before and you didn't ask for brushes, pull out your old ones and grab yourself some paper towels because you're going to need to wash and dry your brushes in between. Now, I'm going to be using, I'll choose the brush I like to do each part of the canvas, but if you feel like I'm using a brush that's too big and it's too hard for you to control, you can always switch to a smaller one. The nice thing about this bigger brush is that it has a nice flat edge, which gives you an opportunity to do nice straight lines. We do not get our brushes wet to start with. We go straight with a dry brush into the paint. Another thing that's important to make this a successful painting is to watch how much paint you get on your brush. You don't want the paint coming all the way up to the metal part of the brush. If you do that, it makes it very hard to clean the brushes in between colors because the paint gets stuck down in there, and you end up with big clumps of paint on your project, and you really don't want that. It makes it harder to dry. If you have a blow dryer that your parents will let you use, you might want to have that nearby and pause the video now and then to go and dry your project a little bit so you're not smearing colors. And I'm going to start today with color number 1, which is this pretty leprechaun green. Now again, what I said about not filling my brush up too full, you're going to want to fill it up, you know, about halfway or a third of the way up, and that will give you better control. I'm just painting along the coat. Now, if you had chosen a different color, if you asked me to pack a different color, you might be using a different color other than green, and you can use that edge to pull it down in there. Now, I will warn you, many of these paints are a little on the sheer side, so you're probably going to have to do a second coat, and with this green, we definitely are going to have to do a second coat. If you want to switch to your smaller brush to get more control, feel free to do that. So we're going to finish up with the green right here, and as I said, it doesn't cover perfectly. So we're going to go back later and add a second coat, but we don't want to put the second coat on while the paint is still wet. Now I like to kind of skip between spaces when I'm painting. That way, if I go directly to the beard and start painting, I'm right up against this green, which might still be wet. So instead, we're going to skip on up to the hat on this fella. And I'm going to use paint color number 3, which is kind of a dark red. Again, if you asked for special colors, or if you just want to flip it and do, you know, a red coat and green hat, something like that, you're welcome to do that too. Make sure you've gotten your brush really good and cleaned. I like to rub it sideways like this so I get the paint off all the way up to the top. And again, I am not loading my brush with a ton of paint. I'm only going to go up a third to a half of the way up. This is red paint. Red paint does not like to cover beautifully. So you will have to do a second coat on this guy as well. Now I like to use the edge of my brush to give myself a nice straight line. You can do that a couple of ways. You can put the edge of the brush right up to the line and pull away. You can hold the brush straight up and down and slide it along the line like that. Or, and this is another thing I like to do, I will flip my canvas frequently so that I get the best angle toward the canvas. I also like to brace my hand or my wrist against the canvas. If you paint up here in the air, you're painting with your arm. If you brace your wrist, you're painting with your hand. And see, I'm going to kind of slide my flat edge of my brush along that line to give me a nice straight line. Now this hat kind of has a cuff on it, so we're not going to take that red paint all the way up that cuff. We're actually going to mix a slightly different color of red later to give that cuff a little different color, and so it stands out a little better. I'm going to try to spread out my brush strokes as much as I can. Again, he's not going to get completely covered, but that's okay. We're going to go back a little later. Now you turn your canvas whichever way works for you. Now we're getting up here to this skinny part of the hat, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to my smaller brush. Also, when you're not using a brush and it has paint on it, put it in your water bowl. You really need to keep those brushes wet once they've got paint on them, or you're going to end up with dried up brushes and you're going to find it difficult to get the color out. So I'm using this smaller brush. And again, I've turned it because this is the way that's most convenient for me to reach it. Kind of smooth out my edge there. And again, with this smaller brush, I don't load it up all the way either. I keep it nice and light with the paint. Okay, now my red is not covering well enough. You can still see brush strokes and all that, but we're going to come back again. Let's see, let's switch to, now I like to put the caps back on my colors so that I don't have too many colors open at the same time. That prevents you from like sticking your brush in the wrong color, but also spilling it, knocking it over, things like that. Get all the red out of that brush. I'm going to color number 4, which is our flesh tone color. And I'm going to paint his nose that color. You can also request, if you're just watching this before you order, you can always request a different color for the flesh tone. Now, one more color that doesn't cover with a single coat, so we'll get him painted and then wash out our brush. Now, I tend to paint quickly because I've done a lot of these. So if I'm going too fast for you, you just pause me and go on with your painting. Now I'm gonna, again, I like to jump around so I'm not painting right up against colors that have just gotten fresh paint on them. And that means I'm gonna skip to color number 6, which is black, and I'm gonna do his little boots. Now it's hard to brace my wrist right here, so I'm kind of bracing it against my easel. You're not using an easel most likely because it's easier to paint lying flat, but you wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing if I laid this down flat, so that's why I've got an easel here. But don't feel like you need one. It looks cool when you paint on an easel, but it is not necessarily easier. I'm a little too big on that shoe, that's okay. I'm going to just make the other one bigger to match it. There we go. Now black does tend to cover pretty well, so we can go ahead and just do one coat on those, but it's up to you. If you'd like it to be a little darker, you can do that too. Now I think my nose is fairly dry now, so I can start on my beard. And we're going to use color number 2, which is white. Now, I know my beard in the sample does not look white, but that's because we did some kind of dry brushing and accenting with a gray, and that'll be what we do with you too. Again, about a third of the way up on my brush. Now, you're going to see, because we've already painted this blue background, the white doesn't seem very, to contrast against it very well. And if you see the little circles here on the edge, those are actually fingers that are sticking out of his beard, so you can paint right over those. Just don't, I wouldn't paint over the ornament. Paint around his nose. And again, we'll need 2 coats of this white to give it a good, this little loop up here is the hanger on the ornament, and you can paint over him. But I'm going to paint around the ornament like that. Now we can still see a fair bit of the blue through here, so we will go back with a second coat. All right. And then if your black is dry enough, you know what, let's not paint the black quite yet, because I think that's, I think if we try to paint close to the black, I was going to do the white down here at the bottom of the coat, but I think that's just a little too close, and we might, nothing worse than to run into black paint when you're painting white. So instead, we'll go back up here to our red. And this might be a good time to do our second coat of red. And you'll see pretty quickly that a second coat makes a huge difference. Suddenly you won't be seeing the brush strokes as much. You'll be seeing a lot of good coverage. But again, don't get way too much paint on your brush. You want to smooth it out. I am really liking that red now. Now I'm going to turn. And this time I am going to use my bigger brush to do the edge, because I really only need to get down the center of it. I don't have to be quite as precise as I was the first time. All right. Now this feels like a good time to go back and fix up that green too. Oh yeah, look how much better that second coat of green is. All right, nice green coat there. He's looking very festive now. Clean out that brush again. And now I think it's time to do that second coat on his nose. Oh yeah, much, much better. There we go. I think our nose is good. We can go back with our white again. Now I'm going to use this little brush to get down here. And just put a coat of white. Now the background's still pretty white. There we go. Now everything that I think needs a coat, oh wait, I take that back. I was going to say we've got all the second coats we need, but we really don't. We need to get a second coat of white on this fellow's beard. I'm not going to worry too much about getting it super white. If you want to do another coat, you could always do that. But we're going to be doing a lot of gray accenting on this, so I don't think it needs to be super duper white. There we go. I think we're pretty good with that white. All right, we are getting ready to do the cuff on the hat there. I think it looks nice. You could do it in a different color. If you wanted to do it in green, you could. You could do it in the white, but I think right up against the white beard, it's a little bit difficult to see. So what I like to do is change the red a little bit. I want to make this just slightly lighter. And the way I'm going to do that, I've got my little cups here. And you don't need much paint for this. So I'm just going to take a scoop of my red paint with my bigger brush. I'm going to take my smaller brush and take because it's clean, and just take a tiny bit of white, and then I'm going to mix it together so that I have a lighter red color there. If you need more white, go ahead and add more. But it's just light enough, just barely light enough. Now you may have gotten a little too much of the red on your brush, so you may want to wipe that off, but you're really not going to need much. And spread it out. Now mine, last time I painted this, I thought way too light. This time I'm not quite light enough, but you can make whatever color light red you like. And just go ahead and paint. We will do a little outlining of this space. So that'll help the red to look different too. And I think what I'm going to do is just do a single coat, and that'll keep it a little bit lighter as well. But you lighten your paint up however much you like. Spread out my brush strokes there a bit. All right. Then I am also going to use that lighter red right here in the middle. This is a Christmas ornament that our little gnome is holding. If you wanted to give this a UK theme, you could request that we give you UK blue for the hat, and like an orange or a copper or something like that for the ornament in the middle. There we go. I think that ornament will need a second coat, but you know, it takes very little paint, so I think we have plenty left to do with it. If you wanted to, at this time, you could stop and use your blow dryer. Otherwise, we can start I would leave the lid open on your red since you've mixed that color there, and you might want to use it for your second coat. But then go ahead and open up paint number 5, which is your gray paint. Now this is where it's just really super critical that you use a tiny amount of paint. I'm just barely putting any paint on that tip of that brush at all. And then you are going to, in this case, I say don't, I'm not going to brace my hand. I'm going to hold my brush way out here at the very end of it, and I'm going to flick. I'm just going to do little movements like this. So I'm going to, that was way too big. I'm going to do little flicks like this. And I need just a tiny bit more paint. And kind of follow the line where his beard would go. Well, you know, that little one big line was a little too much, but I kind of like it. And there, I've just given it a little bit of grayness, a little bit of dimension. I think I may just kind of outline his, you know, do some hair coming out around his nose like that too. And there we're good. All right, I'm going to move on now to the designs that we did on this hat. Now, these are the designs that I made. You can do any designs that you want. You could write UK on it if you're doing something like that. You could put your initials, however you like. Look carefully at mine. Mine are not perfect. My little swirly thing here is just little swiggles. They're not perfect. They're thicker here than they are there. My white lines don't cover completely, but I felt like that gave it more of a knitted look. The dots are the wrong end of my paintbrush. And see my X's, they're all different sizes and shapes. So don't be too hard on yourself. Don't feel like you have to do it perfectly. And I'm going to start you off with, we're going to use our pointy brush and, you know, kind of bring it to, give it a little point. So you're going to have a nice fine line here. And again, don't overload that brush. I can't tell you how important that is. Just a little bit of paint. And then I'm going to follow this top line here. See where it kind of defines between the cuff and the hat. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do a second line. And I'm following sort of the bump in the hat, you know, so that it all kind of follows that line. Now I'm going to make my little X's, and I'm just using the bare tip of my brush. I like to bring mine down to that line. And just like that. See, they aren't all the same size and shape. This was a hand knitted hat, so, you know, it's got a little variety to it. And I think I will do 2 lines up here. Oh, it got a little thicker at that end, so I'll thicken it up at this end. All right, now I'm going to add some dots. Now with dotting, we just stick our paintbrush into the paint, the upside down part. And I'm going to kind of stagger my dots. We'll do one there and one there, so a little higher. And we'll just keep going across like this. You'll have to keep reloading your brush because your dots will get smaller and smaller if you're not careful. And go straight down onto your canvas. That one got a little out of control there. There you go. This time, I think the line above there, now, this is where you got to be careful because things like dots take forever to dry. I'm going to do a little bit thicker line this time. You choose the design you want. And this is where I'm going to do my little, what kind of line do you call it? Curvy line, swiggly line. And I'm just going to, and when I start to get low on paint, my brush will start getting fluffy, so I'll reload. There we go. And what else did I do? I did another line. And then I did some more dots. And then I capped it off with one last line. Now I think it's too hard for me to figure out how to continue that design down there, but if you would like your design to continue on down your hat, you're welcome to do that. Give a little more design there, but you can stop there if you want to. While we've got white paint loaded up on our brush, I'm going to do some little accent marks. So I'm going to accent the edge of his nose and the sides of his shoes. All right. Now, we did say that we felt like that ornament needed a second coat of paint. So remember, this is our custom color. We're going to load up our brush and just go right back over that. Oh yeah, that's better. Now I want to give my little gnome some fingers. His hands are sticking out of his beard, and that's what's giving him that's what he's holding the beard, the ornament with his little fingers there. So I'm going to use my skin color, that's number 4. I'm going to dip my brush in, and I'm going to add 3 little fingers sticking out of, just using the little dots. Those are his little fingers sticking out of his beard and holding on to his ornament. Mine got a little small there, so I'm going to make them a little bigger. There we go. Now, we use kind of a snowy background, but I'd like to use some gray embellishments to sort of show the snowbank that he's standing on. This is up to you. You can do this, but you don't have to. So again, I'm going back with color number 5, just a small amount on my brush, and I'm just going to kind of draw where my snowbank might be. Maybe it's right there. And he's kind of standing on it. Maybe there's a little more snowbank up there. And it kind of just tells you that he's standing on the snow there, and this is the blue sky in the background for him. While I'm with this gray, I think I'm going to do some outlining on this cuff that we made of the slightly different color red. Kind of gives it an edge to it, so you can tell what's the cuff and what's the rest of the hat. There we go. Now, let's go back to our white paint. We're getting close to done here, guys. We did the little shine mark on the little accents on the nose and the shoe, so I'm going to do a little one right here. Kind of the little reflection on my ornament. Oh, and then we need a hook for our ornament, don't we? We've got this little loop. I'm going to do a little, you know, that little bit on the top, and then we'll do a hook coming out, just like that. Now, I think it's snowing where we are. So my gnome is going to get some snowflakes. I'm going to dip the wrong end of my brush into my white paint, and I'm going to start making it snow all over the background, just straight onto the canvas. I almost dipped it in red. That would have been a little funny looking, wouldn't it? Bring our snow all the way down to the bottom. Now, if you wanted to, you could actually draw some bigger snowflakes with an easy way to draw a snowflake. I'm not going to do it in white. Well, I think I will do it in white. I'll do it up here where you can see it on the blue. You want your thin brush again and just a small amount of paint on the top of it. Then you're going to make an X like that. And then you want to crisscross your S with a slightly shorter line. So I'm going to go cross, across, just like that. So I've got 6 points. And then on some of them, you could make a little V on the end, like that. Oh, my V got a little out of control there. There we go. Or you could use the wrong end of your brush and put dots at the bottom of your other ones. So that's one way to make a snowflake on your canvas. Now, included in your design, in your bag of stuff, you're going to find a little pot of glue. That's what this is. The word glue is written on the top. And you're going to take just a tad of this glue and the little silver snowflake that we included. Put a little dab of glue on the back of that. And then I think he looks really good just tacked here at the end of our canvas. Now, any glue that oozes out is going to dry clear. Don't worry about it. You don't want a huge glob of glue, but anything there will be just fine. And you have finished your gnome canvas. If you want to add more details, you could paint a pine tree over here. If you felt like that green was a little too light for a pine tree, you could always darken your green up with just a tad of black paint in there. If you wanted to do some accents with other colors, again, you can mix them up any way you like. And I hope you'll join us for some more canvas painting.